with Hostfully, we do want to streamline operations. We want to enhance the guest experience at the same time. And with that, we have to provide structure, branding, professionalism. We have to make sure that those three pillars, I guess, are communicated to the guest. And by offering our features and our software are going to make that property manager a winner and a leader in their market.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the STR Investing Podcast. I am your co-host Mark Lumpkin, and today we've got Frank from Hostfully. If you don't know Frank, he's got the best beard in the industry. Looks like he's really grown it over the last couple of months since I've seen him at VRMA. Frank, say hi to everybody. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, it's getting long, and my wife has brought it up multiple times, so I think a trim is necessary.
Well, you probably had to grow it out to be Santa Claus for Christmas, right? I mean, you got little kids.
I know, yeah, that'll be money, but then I have to get the grays, and the grays are coming in if you can't tell. So
yeah, that happens with age, man. That happens with age. I'm stoked to have you on here. I know in this episode we're gonna crank through some really interesting stuff about PMSs. How you can scale, how you can set yourself up for success as your portfolio grows, right? We talked about how a lot of our listeners, people tuning in, have a couple properties, but they're looking to expand in coming years. And owning and operating one or two properties versus owning and operating 5 or 6 or 10 are two totally different monsters. So I'm excited to get into that. But Frank, would you just start us off with like a little bit of a background, how you got into the short-term rental space, your journey, how you got up to here, and then we'll dive into what you do at Hostfully.
Yeah, so I didn't always start in the short-term rental industry. I've been in the industry for about 6 years, but I actually came from the traditional hospitality hotel background where I worked for luxury hotels in New York City, the Trump Hotel Collection, the Westin, the W, the Ritz, like all, the high-end hotels in New York City nonetheless. So the first decade of my career was in hotels, but that decade definitely taught me a lot about systems, about consistency, but really drove home the guest experience. So everything that we did was intentional. Every detail mattered. And, details from your operations to your training, to your communication, like nothing of that was accidental. Like if something broke, there was a process. If a guest complained, there was a system in place and even specific verbiage and language to follow up with that response. So at the same time, I started on the guest experience side, but then got promoted to sales coordinator and worked my way up. So I was developing strong sales skills, specifically within the hospitality industry, and really understanding people, where they're coming from, how to solve their problems, how to connect solutions to their real-time needs. So those skills ended up being incredibly transferable later on in any industry that I decided to move forward in. My family and I moved down to Charlotte from New York City, ironically, a few months before COVID. We moved September of 2019, and then March of 2020, I got furloughed. So actually, I moved down with Marriott Luxury Hotel Collection to open up and rebrand the Ballantyne Hotel, which is one of the most prestigious hotels in North Carolina, specifically in Charlotte. So did that, started doing corporate sales, group sales, kind of getting a foundation of repeat customers. And as I mentioned, COVID hit. So I was ultimately furloughed and then laid off. And again, I was blessed to only be laid off for 2 months. I got to reconnect with my kids. I was dad duty every single day. We moved from an apartment to a house. In those 2 months, we were, again, blessed to find a house because now the houses down here have doubled because of everything that transpired with COVID. But during that time, I was looking for jobs. I had a family to provide for. So, I knew about Airbnb. I had stayed in short-term rentals before. It still was in the hospitality industry. And during that time, I truly discovered the short-term rental world and Hostfully. So what immediately stood out to me in that entire process was the creativity and the entrepreneurship in this industry, not just on Hostfully, but the property managers and the short-term rental operations in general. Like, I didn't know that hosts were building brands. They were creating these unique stays. They were doing hospitality, but they were doing it in their own way. And I also noticed a big gap at the same time, that a lot of this was being done manual. They were doing everything themselves. So, the owner, they were the operator, they were the marketer, they were the customer support, they were the maintenance, and they were great and incredible at hospitality at its core. And that's what got them into the industry. But they didn't have the right structure and tools in place that hotels rely on so heavily. So that contrast really pulled me in, and the gap and the need for a short-term rental software is what really pulled me in. And short-term rentals, I mean, they have and they had the heart of hospitality, but it was the infrastructure behind it. And that's where I felt that I could see a lot of value.
Yeah, probably because the industry's so new, right? Hotels have been around forever.
Iceberg. Yep.
They're corporate owned, right? You've got these huge companies that own the hotels, and they're usually consolidated. Mm-hmm. As short-term rentals are oftentimes just owned by mom and pop and John and Sue, and they don't necessarily have the experience, the tools, the resources, the SOPs. Super interesting. There's a lot to unpack there. I want to first, though, I'd love to go down this rabbit hole real quick. Don't have to go too deep, but down the rabbit hole of the difference. I love
rabbit holes.
The difference between the two. You came from corporate high-end luxury hotels to dealing with John and Sue who rent out their ADU at their primary residence. Like, it's a totally different world from that perspective. What are some of the key differences that you have seen in the transition? And then do you think that short-term rentals will continue to follow the hotel model, or do you think that it will always be different?
Well, I think the differences were obvious. Like you said, you had like corporate America, consolidated ownership on a number of hotels, and then I'm talking to mom and pop about their listing. So like I mentioned before, there was no infrastructure in place. Even though the genuine, hospitable approach to guest experiences was there, it was just so much manual work that they were doing. And I still come across 6 years in with that same, I want to say obstacle, hindrance, hesitation really to implement software in their day-to-day. A lot of people are still not excited or wanting to change their current day-to-day and the way that they execute their operations. And that's kind of where we have to not just demo our property, but we have to also educate them. When I joined Hostfully, and again, spending most of my career in sales, and I was working directly with operators and guests and understanding their challenges and helping them find the right solution. And fortunately, sales gave me the front row seat to the real problems in the industry. But then I started to spearhead the partnerships portion of Hostfully. And then that's where I saw the connection, was building those relationships across the ecosystem. And what I find myself now as, the senior director of partner development is developing those partnerships and not just demoing the software to people and just showing them our features and our capabilities, but it's now consulting and educating, connecting technologies, connecting brands and operators. And today my focus is really less about just selling the software, which I continue to do, but also more about building this ecosystem that actually helps hosts scale smarter. And in many ways, it feels like a full circle moment where I'm combining hospitality and sales and marketing and partnerships in an effort to just help shape where the short-term rental industry is going next. And I think that brings me to your second question, which I forgot because I tend to ramble.
You're good. So basically what you're saying is that when you're in the high-end luxury business, there's no hesitation to implement the tools and SOPs and things like that.
No, you need it. You need it in order to execute a seamless guest experience. And the thing is also now, Mark, is a lot of guests that book a short-term rental are expecting hotel processes. They're expecting a hotel experience.
And that's been a shift in the guest expectations really over the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so I think what you touched on is the trepidation of a lot of individual investors and hosts to implement those new processes as they're still used to the old way of doing things. Like, oh no, just the guy, they show up and blah, 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 and we meet him at the door, and even getting smart locks. There was a lot of people that fought that. They're like, no, we want to go meet the guests at the house and let them in. And I was always like, lady, I don't want you to meet me at the house to let me in. I just want to get into the house when I get there. I don't want to have to communicate with you if I'm going to be there at 7:15 or 8:30. Like, I get there when I get there. So that's just a small change that has happened, and I'm sure we're seeing it more and more with technology and the guest communication, things like that. So that's super interesting. How long do you think it'll take? And the question was do short-term rentals catch up, and are we basically just going to be the hotel industry but with individual houses, or do you think there'll always be a differentiating factor between that? between the two?
There's always gonna, because it's by design in the short-term rental world that there are going to be differentiating factors, because I think more so in the short-term rental world than the hospitality hotel world is just this genuine want to enhance the guest experience. Like you said, there are people that still want to meet people at the door. That's because they sincerely enjoy hospitality, so I don't think we'll ever become like a conglomerate. I don't think we're going to consolidate fully. I'm sure there's going to be consolidation along the way in terms of, some of the software that are out there, but that's not going to happen for a very long time. Or so I would like to think it's not going to happen for a very long time. Because again, a lot's changed in the past 6 years of me being in the short-term rental that I've experienced, but we're still just at the tip of the iceberg. So I'm very curious as to what's to come in the industry. Who knows?
It's definitely changed a lot just in the last couple of years. And shit, it's changed a lot in the last couple of months too. So that'd be interesting.
I wonder if it's going to like change. We had like this huge peak. I wonder if it's going to plateau for a bit to like figure it out, and then maybe do another spike somewhere in a couple of years. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I think what I don't think though is that the guest expectations is ever going to go back, right? Guests now expect that the check-in, check-out process, the rules, the things like that are very standardized and are hotel-like. Guests don't want to drag your trash cans down to the curb on Wednesday night before they don't want to do that. They don't want to have you meet them at the house and open up the fridge and have it full of your old condiments, right? We used to do that, right? You used to rent an Airbnb house and it was full of people's freaking food, man.
And that was like normalized. I was like, yeah,
it was totally
normal. Yeah.
It was totally normal. So the guest expectation has changed, and I don't think it's going back. And so the hosts and owners and investors that aren't able to adjust, adapt, and keep up with the times, they're going to have lower performing properties for sure.
Oh yeah. Gone are the days where you just put your listing on Airbnb and you're good. You have to build the brand, you have to build a voice. And that's what, like you said, that's what's going to set you apart from your competition, because they're doing it. You have to kind of keep up with the Joneses in a way,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when people who listen to our podcast, they hear that a lot, right? We talk about keeping up with the Joneses, the amenities arms race, having great design, all that stuff. But I want to dive into like how they scale and how we use a PMS like Hostfully to scale our operations and grow our portfolio. Because we have a lot of listeners that are at 1 or 2 houses, and it's manageable. You don't have to have some of these tools and resources. You can manually do a lot of this work. But as you start to scale, it basically becomes impossible. And there's no way you can manage 5 or 6 properties without a tool like what you guys have. And so would you dive into specifically what you guys do at Hostfully, and then talk on how that helps investors scale their portfolios and streamline their operations?
Yeah, I mean, so like with Hostfully, the industry is maturing, like we spoke about. Short-term rentals are going through the same evolution that hotels went through years ago. With Hostfully, we do want to streamline operations. We want to enhance the guest experience at the same time. And with that, we have to provide structure, branding, professionalism. We have to make sure that those 3 pillars, I guess, are communicated to the guest. And by offering our features and our software are going to make that property manager a winner and a leader in their market. And like I said, you can't just grow your portfolio anymore. You have to improve your margins. You have to reduce your operational friction. Like the next phase of STR growth at all costs has to be sustainable growth. And that's where our software comes in. Again, it doesn't just have to be Hostfully. Would I like it to just be Hostfully? Yes. But there are a lot of property management softwares out there, and I always say this on every webinar, podcast, chat, discussion, conversation. There's not one property management software that is the right property management software for every single property manager. And that's something important to know. Do your due diligence, do your research, see which property management software offers the features and capabilities that build on your operations. Look at what's not working in your day-to-day and see if a property management software can help you with that, because it will. And then there's of course the other software in the industry like dynamic pricing tools, cleaning and turnover management, guest screening and insurance, and like all that stuff. But at the core with property management software, especially with Hostfully, is scaling in short-term rentals doesn't break because of demand. It breaks because your operations and your SOP are not where they need to be. And a property management system like Hostfully isn't just a software. It's what allows you to grow without adding all the chaos. Because the more listings you get, the more guests you get. The more guests you get, the more inquiries you get. And you cannot respond to all of those inquiries manually anymore. Even like scaling with the property management software and scaling without a property management software, your growth is linear. You know, you add 10 properties, you hire more people, you're answering more messages, you create more mistakes. With the property management software, you can automate all of that. And that growth ultimately becomes scalable, and you can grow and you can be successful. And like I said, gone are the days where you can just add a listing to Airbnb and hope for the best. So, you know, just even like most property managers, the professional ones, they're using a property management software that can manage 2 to 3 times more properties per team member than those that are doing manual tasks. And that's the difference between growing revenue and growing stress. So of course, you know, Hostfully can help. Automation is the foundation of scaling. That's a huge trend that's happening now. And you want to make sure your property management software has the capabilities to automate. So many messages. And actually, I was having a chat with an industry leader the other day, and it was look at your inbox. So this is an action item for whomever is listening. Once this podcast is done, go to your inbox. If you're not using an automated guest messaging tool, go to your inbox and see how many of your personal manual responses could have been automated. Check-in, Wi-Fi, address, those simple things. And I can kind of relate. If I get an email at 10 o'clock at night and there's a guest asking what the Wi-Fi code is, if I'm just starting, I'm stoked. I'm like, yeah, let me help this person. Let me run upstairs to my desk or jump into my mobile app and see what the lock code is and communicate it. At first it's fun, but once you start scaling and you're doing it over and over again, you're gonna realize that those little things just build up and it's taken up your entire day, your entire evening. It can take away from your personal time. It will take away from your personal time.
Oh, it definitely will. It definitely will.
And even
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and then, you know, there's AI. Standardization, I think, is going to be, or is, the secret weapon of scaling. You're scaling also with your revenue. I would say, there's so many software out there. If not a dynamic pricing tool, there's a lot of opportunity for you to see what your market is priced at over certain dates. And a lot of people, they still go on Airbnb, they look at a date, they see what their comp is selling at, and then they go $10 less. That's not the way to do it, because they may be lower priced. They may be using Airbnb's special pricing or smart pricing. I don't call it smart pricing because it's far from smart. But they price you super low, and now your competitor is priced low. So now you're going $10 lower. You know, it's just that revenue and doing it yourself at times. If you're strategic, you could do it. But if you implement a software, if you use like a key data or some features within the dynamic pricing tool offers you that market share and that historical data, leverage that, use that, optimize on that. So that's another point, especially with getting software into your day-to-day. And again, you know, it all comes down to scaling. When we think of it, we automatically think of adding properties. But scaling in its true form for the short-term rental industry, yes, it's about adding properties, but you want to remove friction. If you have 5 listings and you're doing a lot of that manual work and you're getting frustrated, before adding more properties, which technically is scaling, that friction is going to continue. That's not going anywhere. It's only going to get worse. Focus on your current day-to-day, how to improve that, and then you can start thinking about adding more properties.
Yeah, so walk me through this, Frank, because a lot of people, the tech stack is intimidating, right? You just mentioned a lot of things, a lot of different tools, a lot of different resources. And if you're an industry insider, if you've worked in this industry for 5 or 6 years, it makes sense. If you have 100 properties, you've done this, it makes sense. But if you're newer and you're getting started, you're going, holy crap, Frank, like I don't even know where to get started. Yeah. And so would you like spend the next few minutes talking me through this as if I'm a 5-year-old and saying, all right, Mark, you got a couple properties. These are the next 3 things that you need to do, blah, 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 blah. Just kind of give me very, very plain white toast, just the most basic version of this that you can walk me through about a tech stack and what we need to have in order to be successful, in order to scale.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of thought leaders and coaches in the industry, do your research. That will be a great place to start so it's not as overwhelming. If only there was a website that consolidated all of this information, But, there's just too many operators that are drowning in tools. And the future isn't more software, it's just better connected software. And automation isn't about removing people, it's about freeing people to focus on what really matters. So yes, that process is daunting. Finding the right tools is daunting. But there is this misunderstanding that you have to have all of the automations, all of the tools as part of your tech stack. You don't. So what I do I do demos with individuals that have a handful of listings. I do demos with people that have hundreds of listings. But the true core with your tech stack, and I could say, dynamic pricing, look at that right away. But in reality, it depends on your market. I've spoken to people that have a 7-bedroom house in the middle of Nashville that can't price that property using a dynamic pricing tool because the market doesn't call for a 7-bedroom mansion in the middle of Nashville. You're looking at like 2-3-bedroom condos. So the intel that Price Labs pulls from Nashville city center is not going to reflect and communicate with your listing. So again, it's all contingent on what the property management or what the property manager needs and looks for. And that's why I always suggest look at your operations and see what's causing the most frustration and friction and then start from there. But historically, and most of the time, your property management software should be the first thing. Because from there, you see who they integrate with, what they integrate with, and then you can go from there. Also keep in mind, the strength of the API is imperative. Because if a property management software doesn't have the strongest API, that integration with that specific software is going to cause you a ton of headaches. Fortunately, Hostfully has one of the strongest APIs in the industry. And if you go to hostfully.com and you see our integration zone, you'll see over 200 or over 100 integrations. And that's a testament to the open API. So again, you want to make sure that the API is strong with your property management software in order to integrate with these tools. But then again, most of the time what you would see is PMS. I would say dynamic pricing tool to follow, and then like an operation software like cleaning and turnover software, and then like an accounting module as well. But what we have seen is a lot of property management softwares are now offering the accounting module or accounting feature within the property management software. Again, depends on what your property management software offers and how you can scale and build your tech stack from there.
So start with a great PMS that has a lot of add-ons. Basically, when you talk about APIs and integrations, those are add-ons with other services, right?
Correct.
I need a clean tool, I need a chatbot.
Yes, but you do have to also keep in mind that there are the software out there that specialize in that, and that software is so much more robust than what your property management software may have or say that they have. Many a times I've seen people come to Hostfully. So like dynamic pricing, for example, we don't do dynamic pricing. We leave that to Price Labs, Beyond, Wheelhouse. Like those guys, day in and day out, their entire dev team, their entire sales team and product team, they're focused on dynamic pricing. So with that being said, there are property management softwares out there. And again, no hate to the other property management softwares, but they are saying they have dynamic pricing. And they do. So you're paying more for that property management software because they have dynamic pricing natively built into their software, which at first, and again, this may change in the next couple of years, but as of right now, that dynamic pricing tool and that software that's native to that PMS is not as good as the other integrations and software that are out there. So what a lot of people are doing is they're realizing after they sign up, after they're onboarded, and now once they're into the nitty gritty of short-term rentals, they realize that that dynamic pricing software in the software is not as good. So now, in addition to paying extra for that feature in that software, they're moving to a dynamic pricing tool and paying for that dynamic pricing tool. So I wouldn't say look for a property management software that has all the bells and whistles. I would say look at the property management software that has a strong core in automated communication, channel communication. Like if you make a change on your property management software for, I don't know, a description on the property, you want to make sure that's communicated to all the channels to which you're connected within seconds. So like something like that's important. Also, unified inbox is very important to look at a property management software. You want to make sure that all the messages you're getting are consolidated in your software. This way, when you receive those messages and you respond to those messages, they go back to the channel from which they originated. So that's another important thing, because technically, there probably is a software to do that, but that's something simple enough. And I say simple, I'm sure the dev team and the product team disagree with me, but something simple enough to have in your software to alleviate that stress from your day-to-day.
Yeah, I got you. And what I'd say is the theme is of what you're talking about would basically, the people that do dynamic pricing do it really, really well. So when you need that tool and you're ready for it, hire the very best at it. And the chatbot, whoever has the best AI chatbot, when you're ready for that, hire that. You guys do what you do really, really well, so hire you for that. So basically, find the different companies that can give you the tools you need when you're ready for them. You don't have to start with them all on day one.
I think that's the most important, is when you're ready for them. When you find that there's friction and stress is when you want to start focusing on a software.
For sure. And the tools you need at 1 or 2 properties are not necessarily the tools you need at 5 or 10 or 15 or 20. You'll need more resources in the future, but starting with a great PMS is like the foundation, and then it allows you to do additions in the future and clip on other tools and other resources.
Exactly. Yep.
It's super cool, man. So Frank, we got a couple minutes left. Where are we going with this thing? What's the future hold for the short-term rental industry? I know we talked a little bit about the difference between the hotel industry and how you can scale with some great tools, but where do you see this going in the next couple of years?
I mean, that's kind of what's so exciting at this point. And being on webinars and podcasts like this industry is still young. It's still in the early stages, but it's getting smarter faster. And, operators that are investing in systems that are really focused on guest experience and the structure today are setting themselves up for the next decade and what's to come, not just the next high season, So that's the most exciting part about the short-term rental world, is how young we are, but it's going to grow really fast, really soon. And even the industry in of itself, because we're growing so rapidly, it's hard to say what to expect. But I really like what you said, Mark, about what the guest expects is not changing. That's staying there. So for short-term rental managers, operators, have that be your main focus, is how you can implement certain software to execute a seamless guest experience. And that's like, with automated lock codes. That's actually something we should have brought up earlier, is that's another software, maybe before dynamic pricing, is have a software that generates lock codes for your smart lock. And if you don't have a smart lock yet, y'all need to get a smart lock, because it automates and it communicates to both the lock and the software, and then the software communicates it to the guest, and you can automate that entire process, and that helps a lot. So I really liked what you said earlier about that too.
Yeah, the list is pretty straightforward, right? Which is the check-in, check-out process is super important. Turning over your property is really, really important. Answering those simple questions, the door code, the Wi-Fi password, the da-da-da. Those are the easiest lift tasks that you can get off of your plate. And then when you get rid of that couple hours a week, or maybe more depending on how many properties, you then give yourself more time to do the high dollar activities and tasks. And so I think that's really the big takeaway from this, is that having the right tech stack and the right tools at your dispense are going to make you more efficient and give you more time back to do the things that actually make your business money or help you grow your portfolio.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean to add 10 integrations to your property management software while you're onboarding. It's not the quantity of the amount of integrations, it's the quality and how it's impacting your day-to-day. So, and it could be just one integration, who knows?
Definitely, man. I love that, dude. I love what you guys are doing. Frank, thanks for coming on. Guys, if you're listening to this, this is probably just a few weeks before we launch strinvesting.com, which is going to be our new totally free resource for all types of different investors that are looking to invest in the short-term rental industry. Frank, his team, they have a whole library on how to use PMSs, on how to use Hostfully, on some of the integrations there. Go check them out. And then Frank, if people want to reach out to you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just email me, frank@hostfully.com. Super simple. And I think I also shared my calendar with you, Mark. So we could always, add that either
I'll
to
probably
the website
I'll probably drop your social, and I'll drop your email in the show notes. I don't want to give away your calendar link just yet. But,
calendar link better than social. I'm boring, guys. There's not much going on in the Frank Bosey world. But, well, the past month has been. It's been a lot of podcasts and webinars.
Dude, I've been seeing you everywhere on podcasts, man. You've been making the rounds. So I'm honored that we had you on. Frank, thanks for sharing your insights, wisdom. I agree with basically everything you said, which is that the hotel industry and the short-term rental industry are very different, but also very similar. And there's a lot of things that our young industry can learn from hotels as we grow and get more mature.
For sure. Yeah. And again, I didn't know if the website was announced yet. That's why I made that little.
That's the first time we've announced it.
If there was only a website telling us what to do.
If there was only a website that had all these resources, we got it, guys. And so Frank, thanks for coming on. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next Monday for another Monday morning market data report, and next Friday for another guest special. So thanks for being here, Frank.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Mark. Always a pleasure, man.